Greetings, friends. It's Monique here, and today I am really excited to talk to you about one of my absolute favorite topics ever, which is ritual adornment and costuming for sacred dance. I am going to be showing you my costume from my recent performance art video here on YouTube, Linguis, Bloom of the Desert Rose. This particular costume is very dear to my heart. Because I made the entire thing from the actual skirt and bra top. Of course, I did not make all of the adornments that I attached to it, and I will talk more about that. But I put a lot of love and energy into this costume, and so I wanted to share a bit about the components of it, the history and the why behind the costuming, as well as some little fun tips as to how I did it, how I build my costumes, and why it's an art form that inspires me and so many so much in this remembrance of feminine embodiment. I am a dance instructor and performer, as well as a yoga instructor of nearly 20 years. I'm also a mother of 3 and have quite a dynamic lifestyle, especially these days, finding and paving the way to being an artist and keeping that part of me alive while being deeply present with my children and with our general trajectory with these wild times that we're living through. So all of that aside, I'm excited to share a bit about my art. If you haven't seen the video, I'll link it in the comments or something like that. So you can check out this new performance piece that I shot in Moab, Utah, which is just an absolutely unique and exquisite desert environment that has these incredible red rocks and arches and just spacious vistas and incredible views. And it's just a deeply magical, profound place to be. So my family and I went on a trip there, and my husband and I dedicated basically a day with the help of some newfound camping neighbors to be with us and help facilitate our small children while we created this piece of art. I could talk about all sorts of different aspects of the piece and things, but I'm going to focus on adornment because that's what we're here to talk about today. The type of dance that I'm doing in the piece, I call Temple Fusion Bellydance, or just Temple Fusion dance. I have trained since I was 3 years old throughout my entire life in a wide variety of different art forms. I have a bachelor in theater and dance. I've performed and taught professionally for many years. And I make the vast majority of my costumes all from hand often. Sometimes I use a sewing machine, but most of the time it's a very tedious and labor-filled and very enjoyable meditative process of art creation in the form of adornment and costuming. Oh, and I will say, if you hear little tweets in the background, I'm here in my craft room solarium, and we have baby chicks. So I have a little bucket of baby chicks chirping next to me if you're hearing it at all in the mic, and maybe I'll pick one up later and show you because they're so cute. This particular form of dance, Temple Fusion, is my own flavor of a fusion of a variety of different dance forms, including more contemporary forms. That was my primary upbringing as a child, was in classical ballet, jazz, tap, hip hop, all of those kinds of things. And then it was when I went to college. That's where I began my yoga practice. I started learning other world dances, and drumming and things like that, and started expanding my vocabulary and understanding of what it means to be a dancer in the larger spectrum. And then from there, my journey went in a variety of directions. But basically, I ended up studying belly dance in a few different iterations, and I deeply went down the yoga path in a variety of different forms of yoga, um, and began teaching yoga. And then at a certain point, began relatively intensively, studying Odissi classical Indian dance. Its roots are in ancient temple dance forms, where the essentially priestesses in this Hindu lineage in Orissa, India, they would adorn themselves, not to go take a selfie and do, mostly what we do with adorning ourselves these days, but as an act of devotion embodied, as the feminine component of existence, being that devotee to God's source, and utilizing the different tools that we have in the embodied experience as an act of devotion to create beauty as an offering to God. And so these Devadasi would adorn themselves in beautiful jewelry and makeup, and do a whole preparatory practice, really, and then offer their song and dance to the altar of God as an act of supreme praise and devotion. This modern form is a fusion of a bunch of different folkloric, classical, modern, and ancient dance forms from all over the world, into an expression of this essence of what it means to be a temple dancer, which is to present our art as an offering of God and an embodiment of beauty personified, not in an egoic sense, but in a sense of praising creation through the praising and adorning of our own bodies, which of course is a facet and an aspect of creation. As I said, I make all of my costumes mostly from scratch, and it's very much a big part of my art expression. And so, for example, this is the bra top. In this case, I used an existing bra base. Sometimes I'll build it completely from scratch, but in this case, it can be pretty simple and handy to just use a bra base. See the kind of not so cute backside. And I hand sewed on this beautiful embroidered beaded vintage fabric. I'm trying to remember what this particular piece came off, but a lot of this costume involves this beaded fabric. And I basically use materials that I find and collect. Some of it is contemporary things, some of it's vintage, some of it's antique. And in this case, in the beaded case, these are vintage pieces of fabric from I think this was mostly one of those cheesy 1980s beaded blouses or a dress or something like that I cut up into pieces. And then I created this panel on a base fabric and kind of like a collage, cut and pasted the different pieces of beaded fabric and hand sewed it together. And really that concept of these costumes being a collage is very much how I perceive it. It's a form of artistic collage where instead of taking like the standard picture collage that we know about, instead of taking, different pictures and cutting them out and pasting them down, we're taking different fabrics, different textiles, different accoutrements and coins and beads and buttons and jewels and rhinestones and putting them together in a new way. And in this particular case, not only is it a collage in the sense that the items are a variety of different types of items that come from different places, but it's intentionally, because the Temple Fusion form is a fusion of many different lineages around the world, so is the costuming. A lot of these pieces that end up on here are tribal jewelry pieces, or other adornment pieces from literally all over the world. So this top, it has the more contemporary fabric, and I put lace on top, and then I'll zoom in, but I literally hand glued these minuscule little rhinestones all over the top of that, which you can barely see, but it just creates a little bit of sparkle. These are some beautiful Peruvian bent coins that I believe was either a necklace or a bracelet, and I took it apart and put them on there. And then, of course, we have the Turkmen buttons, Kuchi buttons, that are a staple to tribal jewelry, and these beautiful ones that we all love so much. And then this, again, is like a 1980s belt that I cut and fastened onto the top. And then in the back, so it doesn't just look like a bra, I do have the bra fastener, but then I sewed some, I think these are like 1920s little shoe buckles onto it with other little brooches or earring. I think these were actually costume jewelry earrings that I sewed on to just make it look complete in the back. So that's that. And then again, I made this skirt completely from scratch, and I don't have any experience in like official costume design. I literally did not, when I started doing this, 15, 16, 17 years ago, I had no idea how to sew like at all or do any kind of costuming. And there wasn't really YouTube and the facilities of what I'm doing right now to share that information. And so I literally was going on, tribe.net and the internet, which thankfully we at least had the internet at that time, and just figuring it out. And so with this skirt, I literally started pinning fabric to a bust and seeing how it would drape and wanting extra. There's these extra pieces that come off and drape around and just really. And then I sewed a couple of these extra little just raw cut rhinestone pieces that I just love this look. I love the combination of using rhinestones and glamour and sparkly, beautiful things, but having it be a little bit kind of rough around the edges, a little bit jagged, maybe even a little bit dirty. I feel like that just gives it an energy of having been really lived and having an experience and a story behind it. I'm going to take a sip of my tea. This is I think this is supposed to be a costume cafe or something. So sip your tea. This is my belt for the Linguis piece. And this belt I built completely from scratch. I did not use a belt base, which I'll show you another example of a belt that I love that I did use a belt base. But I just used this kind of this upholstery fabric, kind of fancy upholstery fabric, cut it out in two pieces, the front and the back, and then I sewed it together with a sewing machine, and then I put these snaps on either side so it snaps together. And then all of the little bits and bobs I hand sewed on from different things that I collected over time. So these are some contemporary rhinestone pieces that I then added little tribal buttons to. I took old zills. These are actually old zills, which I think is super cool to use. And used those as adornment because it has the hole in the middle. So I took the elastic out and then was able to use it like a button with these buttons on the top of it. And then we have a bunch of Coochie coins that I sewed on. And this material in the back, I sewed on kind of a raw piece of antique assoot, which is an incredible Egyptian fabric. If you're a belly dancer, I'm sure you know exactly what I'm talking about. But it has little hand-hammered pieces of metal in it. And again, is just something that's so precious and has such a history to it. So I had some scraps that I cut up and put on the back of that. And then this is a more contemporary remake of an Indian brass necklace that I used to kind of drape on the behind area. And more little danglies hanging off of this other, I believe, Indian belt. And it's worked. I've worn this belt so many times, and it's kind of ratty and fraying, and the suit is fraying, and there's like strings dangling off of it, and even a few of the buttons have fallen off. And I actually love it that much more, again, for the reason of it just really feeling authentic and lived and having a story and a personality to it. And then I'll just briefly show you this other belt, just that I didn't wear in Linguis, but is an example of using an existing belt base. And I just love this belt so much. So I found just a probably 80s vintage leather cowgirl belt at a thrift store with this nice little heart piece. And it's just already, and what was really convenient about it too, is that it already had these little holes on both sides, which means that I could then sew into those holes without having to myself leather punch a bunch of holes into the belt. So that was very convenient. Then I took, as the base of it, similar to how I did a suit on the other belt, I got this beautiful steel cut purse, and again, a vintage purse at an antique store. And I cut it. It was kind of actually a little bit terrifying, if I remember correctly when I did it, because I wasn't sure if it was just going to completely unravel and fall apart in my hands, this incredible, expensive antique purse. Thankfully, it did not. And I think I reinforced it with some glue or something like that and put that on as the base. I just love it. It again has this, it's a little bit falling apart, has this really metallic, antique-y, kind of funky vibe to it. And then I again attached buttons. These are I think these are walrus teeth or something like that. I wish I'd written it down, but these are actual huge real bones, real teeth. Turkmen pieces and coins. These coins are actually not all Coochie. There's some from Kenya and Brazil and all over the place, which I actually love. Again, more Indian necklace. These are Mao Chinese earrings that are handmade along with the big blingy rhinestone brooches and things. I got these beautiful, incredible, really thin, I think it's aluminum hairpins in Bali when I went to Bali 5 years ago for my honeymoon, and had a really special, magical experience having these manifested basically the last night of my trip, right after I went to an incredible Balinese temple dance performance that just left me electrified and awakened and sobbing. And just so deeply profound. Balinese temple dance is an example of a temple dance form that still lives today in Bali and has influenced my work as well. So I found these incredible pieces right after seeing that show on my last night in Bali. Then I've got, various pieces that I've collected over the years from around the world. These, I believe, are African brass upper arm pieces. These I've worn for the past 15 years, like almost religiously, and I love them so much. And again, they're just like antique and kind of tarnished and funky, and I love them. In opposition to that antique-y, tarnished funkiness, I went ahead and just literally, no joke, got these off of, I think, Amazon. I get a lot of things off of Etsy and eBay and thrift stores and antique stores and specialty tribal jewelry vendors and things like that. But these are just straight up Bollywood Indian jewelry, costume jewelry. So these aren't real materials, but faux pearls, but they just work. And I love it. And then I wore my beautiful sterling silver Indian jewelry that I got in Rajasthan, India, when I was training there in Odissi classical Indian dance. For the type of temple fusion that I do, I often wear so in Odissi, you wear big gungaroos, which are the bells that you wear on your ankles. And in the dance form, you're stomping your feet rhythmically with the music. And it's as if you are contributing and playing music with your feet as you're doing the dance. And there's just something really special and actually really sacred about the bells and the ritual surrounding that in the dance form. And so when I'm doing temple fusion, I'll often wear a smaller variation of these Indian little ankle bells that create a similar effect when I'm stomping or moving. It just creates that special little jingle and brings in that quality and essence of the temple dance. And then I also have these awesome, huge ankle bracelets that I like to add as well, as an adornment to the feet and to our connection to the earth. Why I love tribal jewelry so much, and why so many of us do, I'm sure, is because it's meaningful. It has history. It has culture. When these people made these jewelry pieces, there was a function and a reason behind why they were building it, why they were wearing it, what it meant for them spiritually and energetically. For example, the Turkmen people, it's talisman. Here's an example of Turkmen work that is just so beautiful, and it gets even more exquisite than this. I mean, museum grade quality, but with these glass pieces and brass and silver, and it all has meaning and significance. And, in some cultures, women are adorned because they say that it helps promote their fertility. Sometimes adornment is given after a particular initiation. Mothers or pregnant mothers receive adornments. And actually, what I found interesting, Turkmen culture, apparently, as women became mothers and got older, they would actually wear less jewelry because the need for them to be aggressively fertile was no longer necessary. And I also think there's a really interesting energetic behind that, being that, the maiden is making herself up and presenting herself to the world and to her potential husband and, kind of needing to prove herself. And then to me, it feels like, as the woman ages, there's just no longer the need to really prove anything. And it's more just about her experience. There's so much more I could talk about. I could be here all day, but I'm going to try to wrap this up. So I have this beautiful vintage or antique Indian necklace. I believe I got in India as well. So I've got all of these headdresses that I've built out behind me, and perhaps I'll do another video about that another time. So I also have these beautiful roses that are these fabric roses that I put in my hair using porcupine quills, which I believe I learned from Rachel Bryce or one of the indigo people quite a long time ago. And I will use a little rubber band to tie at the end so that when I stick it through into my hair, I put a little clear rubber band on the other side, and that way the rose doesn't fly out and impale someone in the audience. So there's little things like that that you learn over time about costuming, where you learn how to make things sustainably. I primarily just sew my costumes. I don't use a lot of glue because I find that to be the most effective, the most authentic, and there's a real medicine and an intentionality involved in building your costumes in this way, where you're not just kind of slapping something together, but there's a reason behind every piece you're putting in. You're sewing your love and prayers into it. And really, the costuming can become a very profound part of your art form. So that it's not just the dance that you're presenting, but it's an entire experience. It's an energy. It's a transmission of what your prayer and intention is. If you like this video, please like, subscribe, share, leave me a comment letting me know what you found particularly interesting, what you would like to hear more of. Here's what you heard. These are our little hens, our little egg-laying hens that will be going out into their coop soon. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day or night. Until next time.